Hi, welcome to the Tech Talks podcast. This is the podcast where we invite some of the most exciting businesses in the Northwest on to talk about what they're up to behind the scenes. Today, we're joined by Chris from Street Group. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, not too bad, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So yeah, look, I think to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, your job, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I'm one of the technical leads over at Street Group. I look after, since we have kind of two parts of our business, we have Spector, we have Street. Spector's kind of more long running and our marketing kind of prospecting arm. I look after our CRM. So I joined in February of last year, just coming up to a year now.
Cool.
And I look after kind of the people side, the scaling of the teams, hiring, kind of setting up our team structure and that sort of stuff. And yeah, trying to kind of scale a business on the Street side and hopefully get lots more business.
Amazing. So of course I know a little bit about Street Group, but I guess if we start from what was your journey to where you are now at Street Group?
So I guess I went through a fairly sort of traditional route into technology. I kind of did a computer science degree. I then ended up kind of graduating in the middle of the financial crisis in 2008. So
Perfect timing.
Found a job as fast as I possibly could and ended up moving down to Watford for a couple of years. So I worked for what was British Waterways, it's now Canal River Trust, doing some third sector sort of quango work on canals, which is quite interesting, weirdly enough. And then I've bounced around a little bit. I've done agency work for a couple of years, doing fashion e-commerce with people like Misguided, Lazy Oaf, and then went into radio. Did 4 years at Bauer with Key 103 and Kiss and that sort of work, and then went into retail with Sainsbury's for 3 or 4 years, and then into prop tech. So I tend to bounce around a little bit in terms of industry and size of company. So going from a company like Sainsbury's, like 300,000 people, to 50-person startup. It's quite a nice transition and quite a nice what's the word?
Now, a bit of variety.
Yeah, a bit of variety. That's the word. So
it's to change it up. So from that must have been a crazy transition from going from 300,000 people to, you say 50 now?
I think I was the 50th or 51st person to join Street, something like that, around that number. So yeah, it's a bit of a different organisation really compared to what I was used to in terms of scale and speed and everything.
And what have you learned, I guess, going from a massive business like Sainsbury's to a smaller startup like Street Group?
I think there's a lot of kind of culture shock of just how quickly we can do some stuff.
Yeah.
I think very early on, I was kind of trying to get some equipment for some of our mobile teams and was like, right, I'll put together like a big document we need, this sort of stuff, ready to go through all the purchasing sort of. And then Tom was like, I'm sorry, one of our co-founders just eBay exists, mate. Like, we can just get them off. I was like, oh yeah, of course, that would make more sense. And just kind of those, like, you kind of get used to this very sort of enterprisey pace sometimes and sort of style of working, kind of having to just break myself out of that sometimes. It's been an interesting transition. Yeah,
I bet it's refreshing.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I moved. I think I was Sainsbury's was a great place to work and I loved the kind of teams there and the people and that sort of stuff. But I think some of the pace does get kind of frustrating after a while, and kind of moving somewhere where it was kind of much faster paced and much more, much closer from idea and founder to kind of the devs and the product was really refreshing.
Yeah. I bet. I mean, I've worked in small companies, bigger companies, and I know it's something about being able to go and tap the co-founder on the shoulder, going, "What do you reckon to this?" Well, yeah, especially within tech as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, great. So for people who don't know about Street Group and Spector and everything, what does it do?
So we essentially make software that tries to make get finding and moving house easier. We make some software for estate agents, so it's around kind of how they find properties on the market, on off market, and also how they then manage those properties through from sale. There's a big focus on removing a bunch of kind of manual work. So I think one of the stats that Heather Chevy, when I first joined, was trying to book a viewing for a house takes like 6 phone calls on average back and forth from the agent to the vendors, the vendor to the agent to the viewer, and we're trying to automate a lot of that away so the agents can spend more time focusing on customer support and service and less time on rote manual work. I think a lot of people have a really probably negative experience moving house, and a lot of it's just kind of due to the time agents have is quite low. It's a lot of this manual work, so we can make their lives better. Yeah. We can make that experience for consumers and people moving house tons better as well.
100%. And just on that, I think moving house is one of those industries where everyone's got a bad story about it. No one's been like, moved house, easy. Wow. So there must be such an appetite for it then.
Yeah, essentially, I think a lot of estate agents have been really underserved by technology in the past. Like, I think there's a lot of people on really old sort of tech that doesn't get supported that well and kind of very much on-prem, kind of on a server in the office and kind of, I don't know, doing some sort of more modern SaaS practices and kind of better UX and approaches to things can really kind of enable some stuff they couldn't do before, hopefully.
So Street Group and Spector, two separate parts of the business, right?
Yeah, so Spector kind of focuses on getting instructions for estate agents. So kind of, getting people to come on board with you as an agent, and then you can kind of sell their property. Whereas Street is kind of the entire chain of that. It's from when you get that valuation to instructing, doing viewings, doing offers, doing the actual like photos and measures, getting them to Rightmove and Zoopla, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
So it kind of runs. It's a much more end-to-end view of their business rather than kind of the prospecting side.
And so you were the 50th or 51st,
around that number,
something like that.
Yeah,
we can edit that out. 50th or 51st person in the business. What is the business now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we're around 80 or 90 people now.
Jesus, and you joined how long ago?
In Feb.
Wow.
So we scaled up quite fast. Yeah, there's been quite a lot of hiring this year.
Yeah, that's incredible. Is that mostly in tech?
It's a mix of tech, customer support roles, sales roles. It's been fairly even across the business. I think the tech teams, I think there were 9 devs on the street when I joined. We're now around sort of 18, 19, I think.
Wow.
So it's jumped up quite a lot on the dev side, and then obviously Spector as well, and our data teams. So yeah, it's been kind of just a general growth across the board, really.
So February, so that had been, well, everything was back to normal, I guess. After, well, I say normal.
It was roughly, yeah. I was still working from home, but it was, quite odd kind of shutting one laptop, then opening another one, and just kind of getting started. But
no, fair enough. So when you were brought on board from Sainsbury's, what did Heather and Tom say to you? Say this is what we're after for you to do. What was the job?
Yeah, essentially kind of scaling those teams. So
amazing.
Getting to a point where we could kind of, I think where we'd scaled to a point where it was working, but it kind of breaks after that, and kind of structuring the team so we can continue to scale new teams out, build those teams up without it kind of breaking process. And you kind of find more problems as you scale each time. It's like, oh, this is now a thing that doesn't work anymore. Let's fix that. It's kind of been a year of finding those stress points and finding those bits where the scaling kind of breaks down, amending it, tweaking it, learning, and then find the next one, moving along. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey over the past sort of 10 months, 12 months. I think going from kind of 2 teams to 4, about 4 people to 4 teams, about 4 people, 5 people, and scaling that into kind of a more sustainable long-term view. It's been really fun.
What have you learned scaling that quickly in a startup business?
I think the biggest thing has been kind of getting a focus for each team. I'm a big kind of fan of the work Matthew Skelton did around team topologies. It's the idea of kind of sample patterns of teams, and kind of the one around like a stream focused, product focused team. We had to find that product. Before we had like street was our main thing, and we had teams that were like we're street. Kind of break it down to like, right, you guys look after core CRM, you guys look after the mobile stuff, you guys look after our lettings piece of work, you guys look after migration. Having like a really clear focus and means what you're doing, rather than kind of this really wide scope. It lets people kind of focus more on what they're doing day to day, what they're trying to deliver, what kind of the value of what their work is, rather than being like, we're just part of this larger kind of whole.
Yeah.
And what am I doing that's really kind of turn the dial here? They can say, oh, I did this and this enabled X many clients to come on board, this sort of thing. So yeah, that focus was the biggest kind of turning point, really.
It's interesting you mentioned that book. We had John T. Bale on from Cinch, and that was one of the books he recommended. Well, to me afterwards, he sent me like a big list of books, which cost me a fortune. But one of them is Team Topologies. And so Team Topologies all around something that drives your work is all around people owning parts of the products. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's part of the. It comes back to some of the research that Google did around kind of what makes teams effective, and part of that is they looked at a few things. One of that is kind of meaning and impact. And if you don't have that really clear meaning about what you're doing, it's really hard to kind of, if you come in the morning and go, well, why am I doing this? What's it have? I'm just kind of cranking out code. Might be okay, but I think long term you start to go, right, I could do this anywhere. Yeah. What am I doing it for? So find that kind of purpose for each team was kind of gave that a bit of structure and gave that a bit of kind of focus to build around. Wow,
fantastic. And you talked about the work that Google did there. I know you're a fan of Rework.
Yeah. So I think I went to a hackathon a few years back when Sainsbury's kind of partnered with Google, and we had a talk from one of their staff there around the Rework project and Project Aristotle and kind of the research into what makes teams effective. And that's been very influential, I think, for me in terms of how I look at teams and how we scale them and grow them. I think around kind of underpinning of psychological safety is enormous.
Psychological safety? So is it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
So psychological safety was from research done by Amy Edmondson. It was kind of done around, I think the definition is it's how much you're willing to take an interpersonal risk at work. So you might be able to suggest a new idea to your boss, or criticize some work done by another member of the team in a positive way in terms of like, that could be done better.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to take those risks, generally the teams are lower performing. There's a bunch of work done in healthcare in the US that looked at teams that were high performers, she found had more errors or reported more errors, and there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
You expect kind of the inverse. And she found out that the teams were having kind of similar amounts of errors, but the more effective teams were reporting them more because they felt safer to do so.
Right.
And then they could correct them, get better. Whereas the low performing teams were probably having more errors and keeping very quiet about it because of fear of reprisal, fear of like having, negative career impact. So I think that was then picked up by Google as part of their research, and they found it's the single biggest thing that impacted how teams performed and how effective they were. I think it's massively important. I think these days, not even these days, just generally, if you don't feel safe at work, if you don't feel comfortable to kind of give your opinion or share ideas or share feedback, then the rest of it doesn't really matter. You can have the best people on the team in the world. You can have the most experience, the best tools. If you don't feel like you can improve or make suggestions, then it doesn't really matter. You're probably just going to slowly get worse.
Oh no, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
But it's such a, you'd think it would be such an easy thing to think about, but I guess if you are a leader in a business or a boss of or own a business, whatever it might be, someone who you've employed to come in and go, oh, I don't agree with that or whatever. But then I guess that's when you got to take the ego out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have to kind of go, well, it's not a criticism of me, it's a criticism of the idea of a process or a bit of code even. And I go, well, that isn't me, that's the thing. Can I make it better? Yes, right, let's do that.
So if any, I guess, people who are struggling with that and so any leaders within tech or business who are struggling to get the people in their teams to come and tell them what's wrong and what they don't agree with, what advice would you give them?
I think it's hard to shift it. It's one of those things where it's hard to build up but easy to lose. I think it comes from kind of, you have to model it yourself. You have to, when you're given feedback, accept it as a gift, accept it as a positive thing, thank the person for it, and set that kind of from the start. If you've been prickly in the past to feedback, you have to realize it's going to take a bit of time for people to kind of get used to that and get kind of comfortable again to do it. You have to encourage it. You have to ask for feedback. One of the things I kind of encourage my team to do is do that regular kind of asking, rather than just going, yeah, no one's told me I'm doing this wrong. It must be fine.
Yeah.
Is to kind of regularly go, I'm going to do some sort of 360 feedback or some sort of Slack message to people like, what can I get better at? What can I do? Just by asking and setting that regular kind of pattern of feedback is normal and good and not scary. It kind of slowly permutates into the team, I think, and gets people used to giving feedback, receiving feedback. If you just dive in and go, that's rubbish, that's pants, you have to earn that, I think, first.
A good first step for any manager who's looking, manager, leader, whatever, who's looking to get that from their teams, would you say go out and search for that?
Go and ask for it. Yeah, awesome. Show that you're willing and wanting the feedback. That you're saying, I want you to tell me stuff, and then react to it. Well,
yeah.
And then when someone says, I hate it when you do this thing, you always talk over people in meetings. You go, right, okay, well, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah,
I didn't realize I was doing that. Let's add some more work on, and then act on it and show the willing and do the work. Really.
Don't ask for feedback. Get it.
Yeah, and go. No, I don't believe that. I think that's the first way to kind of ruin any of the feedback in the future. It's you have to do the work. I think is the core thing. You can't just kind of go, well, let's make other people kind of give us feedback. You have to kind of show it from the start that you're willing to take that stuff.
Yeah, and empower them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. It's something I'm definitely going to read up on as well. And I think after speaking to people a lot of the time throughout the day who either work in these sorts of teams that don't adopt that way of thinking, or leaders who are losing a lot of people within the teams, that'd be a very interesting way, I think, asking. Are you asking for feedback? Are you getting feedback from the team?
Yeah, it's the servant leadership approach. Really, it's not that I'm kind of there to whip the team and kind of drive forward. It's what do they need? What best facilitates them being effective? Because in the team, really, I'm not the most I'm no longer the most technically experienced person. We couldn't code. They're doing the work. Really, what can I do to make them more effective? What can I do to make them the best in their jobs they can be?
That's fantastic. And I guess talking about teams as well, I know a big thing that you and a lot of people in the tech industry are passionate about is trying to contribute to solving this the skills gap.
Help working it a little bit. Yeah,
help working it.
It's definitely something that's depressing to look at when you see the drop off, especially like in young girls.
Oh, wow.
I think I saw some research this back a few years back, but kind of the drop off in year 9 and choices level, and then year 11 to A level, the drop off in like technical and computer science choices is just massive. It's like a cliff. I think a lot of that is the perception of the kind of the roles we have and cultural pressures, all this sort of stuff. And there's a lot of people focus on like the pipeline problem, but it's kind of, even then it's like once people are into the industry, kind of the opportunities they get, the sponsorship they get in those roles, promotions, just general experience in the industry. There's definitely lots of problems to go after.
Yeah.
I think I've done some work in the past with Manchester Digital around like the education side of it and kind of looking at school age kids and kind of, you know, getting them into just to think about technologies of choice, people who wouldn't necessarily thought about it. I had a really good conversation with the school in Boston a few years back with a couple of lads who kind of, it was like a speed dating for careers essentially. And they were kind of like, you know, what's this about? What do you do? Kind of not that interested. They were like, I can't remember what they wanted to be. It wasn't technology. Yeah. And I started talking about infosec and kind of like penetration testing. Oh, cool. And they're like, you get paid to hack stuff. What? And you saw this kind of like little like light appear of like, that sounds interesting. And I think it's a lot of that is just kind of showing opportunities to people going, that's not just sitting in a dark room coding and hacking away on apps and stuff. There's UX roles, there's really collaborative roles, there's like infosec, there's product ownership, there's all these things where it's in technology, but it's not necessarily the stereotypical role you might look at.
Sure.
I think just giving people those like opportunities and showing them it's out there is massive.
I know as a young lad, if someone had said to me, do you want to go into computers and work on the internet? I'd be like, I don't know, what, sat down all day and crunching keys. But yeah, but as we know now that you got like product owners, BAs, people that perhaps have never coded in their entire life but are involved in the tech industry.
And that stereotype feels really outdated these days. I think if you go into most technical like organizations and look at dev teams, there's loads of collaboration, there's loads of standing around like the whiteboard stuff, there's lots of post-its flying around sort of thing, there's lots of kind of active collaboration going on. And the people that aren't doing that are generally not enjoying it. If they kind of, some people do want to just sit and kind of just zone out and code away, which is it's fine, focus away, it's fantastic. But I think that collaboration is an essential part of what we do day to day now. And that stereotype needs updating. People need to see like what it looks like.
Love that. See, with Manchester Digital, I know that you do other stuff in the tech community as well, right? I know you love GraphQL.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah. So I used to, I guess I technically still do run a meetup around GraphQL in Manchester. It's somewhat quieting down with COVID and lockdown. But yeah, I was a big proponent of that. We went to the conference in Berlin a few times for GraphQL Europe. It was really enjoyable. Just spotted a gap in Manchester. Lots of people using it, not many people talking about it. It'd be nice to get that up and running again once lockdown's kind of calmed down a bit more.
Yeah.
It's such cool technology in terms of, I think there's a theme here. It's kind of, I really like the idea of it being a people-focused API rather than being around technology interactions. It's more like defining around how your data works from a product point of view, how those interactions work and how that kind of fits together rather than going, here's some endpoints, off you go.
Right.
It's how do these things interact? How does this get used? And then building something that reflects that instead. So the technology is cool, but kind of the cultural change it engenders is really quite nice as well. There's like a ways of working kind of that come out of it that I think are really positive.
It breeds curiosity.
Yeah, it's we use it quite a lot at Sainsbury's, and we end up having on our posts on a Jira board sort of thing. Every single one had a big discussion at the start, like what's the scheme of this? How's it work? It wasn't just devs kind of coding it out. It was the product owner. How's it work? Does this make sense? Let's pull these apart with no code being written. Right. But just looking at our data model, looking at how we'd fit it together, thinking about how that affected the product, thinking about how that affected users, and then building it. Rather than building it first, going, oh, that's mostly okay, and going really feature focused. It was like data model zoomed out, product interactions, sort of stuff.
Again, a disclaimer: I'm not a techie, so I don't know what GraphQL. I know what GraphQL is, but I don't know how it works or anything. The differences between that and others, but yeah, I've definitely seen it pick up in speaking to people. Definitely, it's always like AWS, React, GraphQL seems to be the three buzzwords. You know. Going back to just on the junior candidate side of things, getting people into tech, is there anything that you think has either worked for you or that you'd want to see companies doing more of?
So yeah, we've just hired our first 3 juniors in Street, I think, ever recently, on the dev side at least. So they were in August, September time. That's been really fun. So kind of just kind of setting up those roles and setting up the process to be a bit more friendly to kind of like brand new devs. Yeah, it was a really enjoyable thing. And we had so many candidates that was like, oh wow, you've done this, then you completely switched to this. And the way people got into technology, all the different routes in was really inspiring to kind of see how people approached it, and the kind of drive and the passion people had to get to do it was just, it's nice to be reminded sometimes that some people really, you get a bit jaded, I think, after quite a few years in the industry, and go, there's people who really want to do this, who are really excited about technology and how they want to go after things, who are kind of right at the start of their journey. I think one of the biggest things we did was really focus on the core essentials of what we needed. I think a lot of people kind of reuse their process, and we kind of built up an entire new kind of hiring process for it and went, okay, we don't need someone who can do this. We need someone who can who can try kind of our core technology, and then who can kind of learn and read and kind of try new things.
Okay.
So we built a kind of technical exercise. I know a controversial in the industry, but was here's an existing application. Here's one thing to do. All the tests there for you, all kind of the structure there for you, in the same way it would be in the job. You wouldn't have here's a brand new thing, go write it. Generally, as a junior in a new role, you'd be working on existing applications. Try this, and then try this as well. You might not get it first time, but do some learning, do some reading, try this out a little bit. It was all quite there was no gotchas. It was very much if you've got any questions, ask us. We're not trying to catch you out here. It's not there's no tricks in this test. It's just, this is literally what you'd be doing on day one or week one, is try this out, see what you get, see how you get on with it, try this things, have some questions. So trying to see who could kind of pick that up. We had some fantastic submissions who kind of really pushed and went, oh yeah, I've done this. I've never done, we use a lot of Laravel. I've never touched Laravel before, but I tried it out. It made sense. I think this is about right. It was it's not perfect, but you can see you've tried it. You can see what you've learned, and that's all we need. Is someone who can learn and kind of take coaching and go from there. So we got some really, really kind of brand new people in who have all been fantastic, honestly, and have really, really impressed us, I think, in the first sort of 3-4 months. So yeah, already really independent, already cracking on. So it's been a really positive process that I cannot wait to do again. I think once they've kind of settled in and we've got more capacity, rerunning that and getting another kind of cohort in, it's exciting.
So I love that. So as opposed to if you're hiring perhaps a senior person, it would be more around technologies they've used and projects they've worked on. This is more around competencies and the way.
Yes, but I think it's mindset and kind of how they approach problems, how they learn about stuff. It's just, you're not expecting somebody polished in any way, shape, or form. You want someone who can show that they're willing to do that learning and do that experimentation and be coached and take feedback and all those sort of things you kind of expect from a brand new person.
Yeah, and the technical exercise, I know it's controversial, but it's not in the traditional tech exercise.
No, exactly. It's not like go and do some code exercise or here's go build a React app in 2 days sort of thing. It's just one little feature. I think it was about 4 lines of code you need to write, really. Cool. You can probably crack it out in about an hour, honestly, in an hour, rather than the hour that takes 5 days that you sometimes say.
It's an entire new piece of their products that they're asking you to do. Yeah, and I guess that in itself will show an inquisitive mindset and a real passion for.
Yeah, I think you have to respect people's time a little bit as well with that sort of stuff. It's especially people who kind of trying to get into the industry. There must be so many applications and so many kind of job searches to kind of get their foot in the door.
Yeah,
if everyone does a 2-day thing, and suddenly you've got a week worth of things for 5 roles. So kind of just trying to keep it as lean as possible was a big push.
Love that. So and I guess coming to the end of this, I always like to ask people's advice on people looking to get into technology. It kind of leads us nicely onto that. What would be your advice? I know it's a while since you did that.
I always feel like I'm somewhat of a fraud kind of giving advice about how to get into tech now. It's I think the biggest thing that kind of impresses me when looking at kind of junior or CVs is having built a thing, having kind of completed something in the industry for a couple of years, showing that you've kind of delivered something, but also you understand why it's working. So you've kind of graduated from I've built this line of code, I've done this, to saying I've done this, the impact it had. Here's why I understand why it was important. I understand the product behind it and what it's trying to do. Kind of that impact is, I think that's helpful once you've got your foot in the door.
Sure.
And kind of looking for more kind of mid-level roles. I think from a brand new point of view, it's that mindset thing. It's kind of showing you're willing to learn, showing that you're happy to pick up new things, and that you are really coachable. You want to be given feedback. Kind of back to the same subject again.
Yeah.
But you want that feedback and you're receptive to it, and you want to kind of develop your skills as quickly as you can. Yeah, there's so many routes into technology now. I don't want to give advice on the best one. I definitely think degrees are important still, but are much lower in the chain, like boot camps and kind of self-taught side of things. There's so many opportunities to learn now that it's not like have you got a 2-1 in a computer science degree sort of thing these days. It's very much more you might do, but can you show that you can learn? Can you show these things? It's finding opportunities to do that stuff outside of university. I think university gives the structures to do it, but you have to find that structure elsewhere if you're not going that route.
Yeah, love that. Thanks for coming down. Really nice speaking with you, and really excited to hear what Street Group's up to. And I'm excited to see where they're going to be in the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.